our last topic is going to be a little more in your wheelhouse, which is culture, trust, and epistemology. I see it as I've assumed it's just like, hey, the community that you're running for a company, let's say, is kind of like a group of employees, but it's not. They're not employees, but it's like it's its own subculture. It has its own culture, just like the company and the community in the company does.
Hmm.
And we know from literature, Pat Lencioni, just how trust is important. The five dysfunctions of a team, I think he wrote, but just how trust is important. And I wonder how realism supports that.
Well, I've been running communities now for the past 10 years. I worked initially in the cryptocurrency and Web3 industries. And at the start, everybody was pretty much anonymous. So you'd had these avatars on the screen and people called Pickle234 or something silly like that, and you'd never know who they were. Occasionally they may say, "Hey, I'm from Austria," or something like that. And then you'd get some kind of idea roughly of who they are, but they'd never tell you their real name. And they'd never tell you where they're from. They'd never tell you really what their beliefs were. You could piece things together over time once you got to know them a little bit better, but it was never explicit. And so it's an incredibly low trust environment. Of course, I would always say who I am, first name, last name, real face. So it was very unbalanced as well, in a way. Um, and I found that was actually a really good training ground for building trust, and for exploring ideas surrounding realism, because even though I could never really articulate myself as a realist in the past, because I didn't know Aquinas until I'd never even really heard of Aquinas or how useful he was until about 3 years ago. But I've been working in community building for 7 years, for 10 years, so 7 years before that. So I would always be consistent. I think that's important, and honest. Tell people what I really think. It's very difficult to be consistent as a liar, because it's very difficult to remember your lies. You end up saying something which contradicts something that you said before, and it's just easier to tell the truth.
Or you end up being really vague. And then people like me are like, why can't you explain it?
Yeah, try to be specific. People do notice these things and they pick up on it. The other issue is that in online communities, the written word is completely lacking in tone. So depending on how you feel, you can read the same sentence completely different ways. And that can reduce the ability to communicate effectively, which has a knock-on effect on trust as well. So, there are a lot of challenges to it. So it really is, I think, the best training ground for realism and being truthful and honest and gaining trust through that. If you don't adopt the principles of realism there, in my experience, those kind of communities fracture, especially in Web3 and crypto. There is a prevailing attitude of, let's break down the barriers, guys. Let's construct a new world. Let's make something new here. Let's define our own reality. And it attracts its fair share of subjectivists and relativists and people like that. And I think that's a huge contributing factor to those communities falling apart, because the success rate of a crypto community is roughly about 5 to 10%, maybe less, over a 5-year period. Very often the use cases that they have don't exist. They say they're set up to solve some major problem in society, but end up not solving it. Even until now, I would say there's only like 2 or 3 areas which have stood the test of time. And that mostly is crypto trading, buying and selling crypto, So I think that there's, they talk about it as product market fit. That's what they tend to say, product market fit. But I just think are you aligned with reality or not? But they have these terms for it.
Surely the product market fit depends on, at least as a necessary component, coherence with reality, right? Or
Yeah.
yeah,
The very same people who are talking about product market fit don't agree that there is an objective reality. So it's like, how are we going to even get there, at
yeah,
all?
yeah.
Do we know
There
what?
are no absolute truths. Is that an absolute truth?
Yeah.
Kind of
So
the same thing, right?
yeah, and so this frustrated me enough because they try all these growth hacks, website revamps. Um, they'll try these new product features, these pivots, and all this kind of stuff, and things get better for a while. But the underlying root cause of all these problems remains unaddressed. And honestly, after 10 years of doing this, I just got sick of it, and I'm just thinking, right, let's go deeper. Uh, but people are very reluctant to ask these kind of questions in general, and think that it opens up huge hornets' nests, and it does. But that's the price you have to pay, unfortunately. And I learned that in crypto, especially. But I found that many other industries are nowhere near as volatile. You know who you're talking to. There isn't this anonymity going on. There's not this huge volatility in the market where prices go up and down. There are real use cases, so you don't have any of these problems. So you can actually apply what you've learned in these very difficult situations to organizations that really do work in industries that really are necessary.
So I guess my question then is, because what I've seen a lot of is if I'm in a community where like lately where there's not a lot of trust, like so I was a Twitter user, but lately the algorithm changed and now it's just a whole bunch of uh like say atheists or whatever saying these things, and I'm just like, nobody believes that, right? And they're so unskilled almost that it feels like Elon Musk is trying to get me to just like, oh, that's not true. It's so easy to debunk that, right? And so but they're such dumbed down arguments that, and unsophisticated arguments that I feel like, oh, I'm being played right now. The algorithm changed because they think that I'm going to be more involved now. And so I've lost trust with with Twitter right now. Right.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's ever going to change, but I've lost trust, and now I don't want to go there anymore because I find myself seeing those things. I'm like, wait a second, they can't say that, and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot they changed the algorithm, and now they're just trying to get me engaged. And I don't work for Elon Musk,
Yeah,
right?
I
I work
think.
for myself. So
Yeah, I think that's true. I think even Twitter before Elon Musk was arguably better. And I do feel the same sense of being manipulated. When I go onto Twitter, when I look at the conversations, it just seems like tribal warfare. And it seems like as if it's groups of people being pitted against each other to try to create as much messaging as possible, as many hits as possible, like feeding on people's anger and pride, to try to generate controversy. And I don't think it's a real truth-finding platform at all, although it's marketed that way with community notes and things like that. I just don't get the sense that there's any resolution to any of it. It's actually just for the sake of it. And yeah, it
well,
does.
maybe he's bringing us to the logical conclusion faster of social media.
Sorry, say that again.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't catch that. Say
I
that.
was wondering if maybe he's just bringing us to the logical conclusion of social media.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. I think he stands to gain so much from it. And I think there's
Well,
not any material.
so yeah. Well, so how do you skillfully then well, let me ask this question. What makes companies adopt more of a well, all right, so maybe I'll go back to that. I don't know if I finished my question because it was fun to talk about, but the um when you have a community that's based on idealism, I find that I don't trust it. I don't trust the people. I don't take them seriously. And if I take them seriously, they waste my time. If I don't take them seriously, unfortunately, that grinds against my nature of not taking a real person seriously. But at the same time, Uh, I save time. I'm more focused, right? If I don't take them seriously. If I'm in a community with people who are challenging me, who are, you know, we're building something together, kind of like you said, nothing gets resolved over there. So I'm wondering if what what makes companies adopt an idealistic frame for a community when it doesn't work. And now I'm assuming it doesn't work. Feel free to question that assumption as well.
Well, I think there's a few things. One, you probably need to go to university and ideally have an MBA, and then you're really going to be stuck with it. I think that's really,
Wait,
it's
explain
much
that.
more difficult to extricate yourself from that kind of thinking if you've gone quite far in education. Generally,
Right.
you're an exception. I rarely see it. um, and then if you look at the people who are the most successful businessmen and entrepreneurs, they often drop out, don't they? They drop out in the first year or so, and they build some fantastic communities. I mean, Elon Musk, for example, for all his flaws, and I agree there are many, the community that he's created at Tesla is unbelievable. The community is self-organizing. It's not centrally administered. It's set up by fanatics. They're constantly posting about how many miles they've done with a certain load of electricity, and they're showing off all the features and components and parts, and
So you're talking about not just the company itself, but the community of people outside of the company.
yeah, they self-form. It's not centrally administered at all. I find that absolutely unbelievable. Um, they're they're so bound up with their identity with the Tesla car that it's incredible. Um, and I think that it's the people who kind of have to learn the hard way, um, who perhaps don't have the benefits of having an education and going through the usual route, who have to figure things out and prove themselves through the numbers and the figures, rather than the piece of paper, as to what the truth is. So I think that's playing a part in there as well. And what other aspects are there? I think there's a certain sunk cost fallacy involved. Is that when you've gone down a certain route long enough, and if you have explained your beliefs loudly enough, and to a lot of people, it becomes incredibly difficult over time to just step back, because it takes quite a lot of humility, and you look a little bit silly. Maybe have egg on your face for a little while. Um, it's much easier to double down, kind of a little bit like what we were talking about earlier with the conscience things. How you fool yourself into believing that something's true. It's just much easier just to double down and just say, no, time will prove me right. This is just a phase, and everything just goes down. I think that there's an element of pride involved with this. And it's
And again, we're talking about having, hosting a community where idealism is a major component, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because even when idealism proves you wrong, you'll just say, well, it's not a problem with the model. It's something that came up that, these things happen, we'll overcome it using the same approach. That's 10.
Communism has never been tried correctly.
Exactly. Let's get it right this time, guys. Everyone's nervously looking at that, thinking, please, let's not try that again.
Well, maybe the realists are doing that.
Yeah, the realists are definitely doing that. We learned about this last time, please.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's the same thing. I mean, at its core, communism is idealistic. It's utopian. And the word utopia, the U in it means I think utopia means land, and the U means not, like it's not possible or it's impossible. So it's kind of, I think the word itself is a joke. Utopia, it came up as a joke, like this doesn't exist, but people still have this because they want to create heaven on earth. And
I
there's
was
nothing
just
wrong
going to
with that.
say that it's a proxy for heaven for them, right?
Yeah, it's a proxy for heaven, and there's nothing
But
wrong with trying to make things better.
right. But for people, I mean, as Christians, we would say you do have to bow before God. his will is supreme. And I think that the attractiveness of a utopia is that, well, God's will is not supreme in a utopia like this.
That's right. You know,
In fact, you can't really have God, as we saw, because you can't have people answering to someone higher than the state, because then the state wouldn't have its control.
yeah. So Aquinas talks about something called ends, 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 and the hierarchy of ends and how they need to be properly ordered. And I find this incredibly fascinating with organizations as well, like, and their communities. Very often, what you'll see is an organization basically putting profit, efficiency, control, scale, these kind of words as their end. And they'll sometimes do this accidentally, but sometimes they know deep down inside they shouldn't really be doing that. They'll feel the natural law kicking in, and then they'll say, no, it's diversity, it's inclusion, it's equity, it's these beautiful sounding words. That's what our goals are. But inside, in the boardroom, in the private meetings, it's like, this quarter we need to really push things. We're a little bit behind. We need to, our revenue figures are terrible. I've got a shareholders meeting next week. What am I going to say? So in practice, the ends get distorted and they get disordered. And Aquinas is really clear that you need to have everything in its right place. And ultimately, the ultimate end is beatitude. It's to serve God. And then, if you have a secular organization, that's obviously not there. And even in some Christian and Catholic organizations, it is there, but it gets disordered because of just the pressures of running a business. And just in my experience, it seems that every organization that fails, that it seems to be because they've disordered their end. They've got things in the wrong way around, like Enron, FTX, Arthur Andersen. They've all made the mistake of putting profit above everything else, and everything else has suffered as a result of it. And it's like reality. This is a feature of reality. This is the mechanics of reality, and it's been ignored, and you suffer for it. It works for a while, but it doesn't in the end.
Yeah. So when we do, well, in my experience, when you create company values, you're saying, what would you fight for, right? That's sometimes helpful. But for some companies, you can actually say, what's right and wrong, right? What's right and wrong for this company? And some people might say, you might start out the conversation, oh, profitability, and those aren't the values though. Those are a byproduct of what happens when you do things really well. But what's the how and the why? And so, the why sometimes has to do with mission, vision, things like that. But the values must be testable. And I think that's what really, practically and tactically, I think those are the things that, so if you and I are going to talk about how do you actually be realistic, I think one of the things is like, well, what does this look like on a Tuesday? And what does this look like on the ground? What does it look like when our customer service person gets a call from this person saying this, right? What do our values look like? Do we understand them? And so we seem to be coming back full circle, because I think it really comes back to, like you're saying, alignment. When you have misalignment between those things, everybody knows it. Everyone's confused. I've been at places where they tell you two things, and then they're high pressure situations where that you're supposed to claim that you did this and you're responsible for this this goodness, right? But then they want you to do this thing, which is maybe illegal slightly or just a little bit weird.
Yeah.
But then in the end, that the reason they told you those two things, the pressure is to do the wrong thing. The explicit value is to tell you to do the right thing, because they know they can find the email that says, oh, we don't do that here, but you did it anyway, even though the pressure is invisible.
Yeah.
And so everyone feels like conflict, and everybody wants to get out of a company like that. Nobody wants to be there.
Absolutely.
So, what do you have to pay people to stay, right? You have to pay them more to stay. You have to create fear. for them to stay. Hopefully, if you can do that, maybe uh, you you probably have to deal with a lot of attrition. You know,
Yeah. That's a typical
um,
let's run ads company, because the employee is not going to tell anyone to buy that company's product if they're being
right?
forced into an ethical situation like that. They want to get out, and that's going to be a high churn company. Now, I'm not just to say, those things that I mentioned before: profit, efficiency, scale, control. They're not bad in themselves. I should make that clear.
Correct.
They are
Right.
goods. It's just that they're secondary. They're instrumental. They have to serve the mission, and and they tend to emerge as a result of that mission being achieved. Um, Although it takes time, and it's a slower way of doing things. If you're going all out for money first, you're going to get more short term gains, but the long term future is going to be compromised. And so I think that can get confusing as well, because in that example that you presented, sometimes people will be asked to disorder those things, um, and that's the conflict that they feel, that sense of the natural law kicking in. That's not the way it should be. Um,
Hmm.
I should be doing the right thing first, and then the money, the control, the efficiency, the scale should come after that. And I don't know whether that's down to poor articulation by management, or whether it's something which is more you know malevolent. I think sometimes these things can be done innocently, just
Hmm.
because of a lack of knowledge and a lack of understanding of how things should be properly structured, lack of training. Um,
You know, what's funny though is that I really think that. So I've been in a few situations lately where I've been interfaced with different cultures for projects, and one of the things I notice is that low trust companies, they're very stiff in the meeting. It's like they're scared to say the wrong thing, or they say something and they cringe, and they're afraid not to know things. And so, but I find that when you have a good culture or a good person who interacts with that kind of culture, they put everyone at ease because they're not trying to prove anything. They
yeah,
know it's kind of like, if I have value here and I don't have to prove to everybody I have value. I know my frame. I know what I'm about. If they don't get it, they don't get it, and that's going to be a bummer. But I want to make you feel good. I want to joke with you. I want to ask you about your weekend and I want to laugh with you a little bit, right?
yeah,
And there's just a different kind of culture. It's a generosity. It's like, I don't have anything weighing me down. I am here to serve, right? I'm here to love
yeah.
and to serve, grace and truth, truth and love, however you frame that.
Mm.
And I think that pays off right away. I don't think that someone has to, oh, let me interact with that brand name. 6 months later, you have, that can happen very quickly because you're creating that brand within your company, and then even outside of your company, in your community. And that's how you earn that. You become that generous company, and then people see that right away, and they know it right away, and they're like, I like this person. And they start to realize very quickly that it's because of the brand, it's because of the company and the culture they have,
Yeah.
where people can be honest and truthful and not be stiff, not trying to prove everything, not trying to like watch your back, because this company is going to stab you in the back if you didn't read that sentence in the contract, because they know, oh, this company is kind of trustworthy. It's going to cost me less to work with them because I don't have to watch my back. It's going to be more enjoyable to be on a call with them because I don't have to prove everything. Like, if I don't know a word, they'll laugh at me, I'll laugh at me, and everybody's okay. You know? And
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I think that it's very interesting, because when I think of brand, I often think of creators and creativity to create the brand. And I think the reason why people feel nervous when they speak up in meetings and say the wrong thing, perhaps, or cringing and things, is because they're not sure whether they've aligned with what has been created. And because it doesn't feel natural. So they don't know whether they've stepped out of line or not. But I do associate the word brand with creative. When I'm wondering if it should just be stripped away, all of that, and just go to back to what is, which everyone kind of feels and senses. And then there wouldn't be any cringy moments, would there? It would be, people would know what to say. They'd feel comfortable, maybe. They would have to check the list and go, is this right? Am I off here? They'd know.
Well, it's a good name is better than riches. I think that's what branding really is. And that's what culture really is. It's what all this stuff really is. When we talk about being human, I think we mean something more than that. I think it's good too. It's not just be genuine, it's be good and genuine. And that requires a knowledge of good. I
Yeah.
think, like you said, there's the natural law written on people's hearts, I think, that makes them gravitate toward a good brand, a good culture, something that feels honest, feels down to earth. I mean, if I'm on a call and I'm joking with you, you can ask me anything, right? But if I'm on a call and I'm being very stuffy, right? Then you might think if you ask me a question, I'm gonna expose you, right? Or because I don't want to be exposed. Maybe I'm hiding something. But if I'm joking with you, like you can be like, hey, about that contract you sent over, can you tell me how you came up with that number? And I can be like, you know what? Yeah, I'm so glad you asked, right? Let's talk through that. And so now it just puts you on such a better place, but it's built on honesty and goodness. It's not based on honesty and badness. It's not based on dishonesty and niceness. Um, it's based on that genuine. It's based on I think realism sets people free. I think
Yeah.
realism gives people something to stand on. I think corrupt realism or idealism, and maybe I don't know, let me try this on for size. I know we're getting toward the end here, but corrupt realism is stuffiness. It is, they're going to stab me in the back. What I say can be verified, but it also can be twisted. And idealism, I don't know, maybe it's even more toxic than that, because idealism, you don't even know, like, are they right because they're the victim, regardless of truth?
Often.
Am I going to get thrown under the bus because I said something that was insensitive, even if it was very true, very helpful, and very relevant?
Doesn't
I
matter.
don't know.
It depends how it was taken. That's the thing, isn't
Right.
it? It doesn't matter what your intention was. It matters how it was received. And, you have no control over that, really. I think that it's completely true that this stuffiness, in politics, I think, kind of gossiping culture, backbiting, backstabbing, that kind of thing is what happens when you abandon realism. And yeah, if you don't really know where you stand, if you're in these constantly shifting sands about what's good and what's not, you spend more of your time trying to keep up with that than actually getting the job done.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I felt that. Yeah, it's almost like, yeah, but it's like two types of toxicity, two sources right now that are really popular. One of them is the corporate, competence, but I'm trying to catch you in something and trying to, like, politic my way to a promotion or whatever. And then there's the other kind of doing that, which is it's not about competence or perceived competence. It's about, uh, how offensive you were, and I think I look at HR departments and I just think about companies that are really honest and good. They're not constantly trying to watch their back because they might be seen as insensitive, or they might be seen as, they might be might be used for someone else to climb on top of, politically, whether it's through competence or just offense, right? Uh,
Um,
yeah, I
yeah,
feel like maybe that should be better developed than next time I
no,
explain
that's
myself.
probably another call, because if you
Yeah.
can't say what's true, and if you're worried about hurting people's feelings, very often the truth doesn't come out. It's sometimes sugarcoating something too much means the truth doesn't get out, because truth and charity go together. And so if you compromise on one, the other doesn't really shine through. I think it requires a lot of good communication skills, try not to offend everyone. And yeah, I mean, but the truth does hurt, sometimes it's not pleasant, always. So, well,
But in a healthy environment, the truth is not toxic.
yeah, exactly.
Truth and love, like truth given with love, in love, right, it builds.
I fully agree, fully agree. Yeah, I think so. We may be coming to the end at some point, but I think that we've covered so many good things here, and I'm just trying to think that maybe we should do this again and maybe do another hour because I'm not used to doing so much thinking in with
Yeah,
short.
I hear you. Let me well, let's close off
Yeah,
and let's I would like you to tell me in a second where we can find you, where people can find you if they want to know more.
yeah,
And then in the meantime, I think what we've covered is, so we talked about we are realists and we believe that truth and love go together,
yeah,
create great brands, create great marketing campaigns, great thought leadership, and great communities,
yeah,
cultures, and so we've thought a lot about this. Uh, we we're kind of on a mission. I want to work with realist companies. I think you do too. And so we're
yeah,
trying to encourage people right now, right? To that this is not just it's not just something, oh, it's non-woke, Um, it's not axe grinding. This is just classic. How do you be effective? And in order to know how to be effective, we really want to see things as they are. And that's really all we're talking about is seeing things as they are, right?
yeah,
Having a good solid epistemology, like knowing how we know stuff from the branding standpoint to internal consistency in our philosophy, going out and talking with people, getting real information, getting good information that will help your company sell more, that will help a great company who has earned it benefit from that, right? Benefit from a great culture and truth. And so what I'm wondering is what would you add to that? And then along with that, how do people find, as kind of a closing statement, how would people find you?
yeah. Just to add to that, I think that was a great summation of what we covered. We also uh, touched on the importance of perspective in objective truth. It's not necessarily completely separate from it, and I think that was very important clarification that you made earlier. And I fully agree that I just want to make sure that I avoid all the politics. I'm not interested in any of that. I'm just only interested in being effective, doing my job properly, and helping realist organizations succeed. I know they're in the minority. As to converting idealistic organizations to realist ones, that's not my wheelhouse, really. I don't think that's actually very easy to do. And but I do think the realist organizations have a huge advantage, and I just want to help them compound it so that they blow their competition out of the water.
Mm.
In terms of how to contact me, best place to do that would be on LinkedIn. My name's Oliver, and my surname's Muldoon, which is Muldoon. You can find me on LinkedIn. And yeah, just send me a message, send a connection request, and we can have a chat and tell me about your business and what you're doing. And I'm happy to talk to anybody who's involved in this area. That's how I met you, Chris. So, and we've also met a few other people, haven't we? We're starting to build a small group of people who understand this. And yeah, long may it continue. And what about yourself? How can people get in touch with you, Chris?
Yeah. And so likewise, I'm on LinkedIn, Chris Stadler, Stadler, and we'll probably have these our names in the description of the videos wherever fine videos are displayed. And then yeah, I'd love to have another conversation. I'd love to see the interest though, and I want to know if people are interested in this topic and want to hear more about it, and maybe want it more developed, brought down to earth, turned into process. I'd love to know what people are looking for as well, and so I'd love to hear that in any comments.
Yeah.
Um,
I'd also like to
but
objections. as well. You know, like to
Oh
sort of
yeah.
stress test a lot of what we're talking about, as we were talking about earlier. You know, we want to hear, you know, where we may be going off kilter, or if something's been said where, you know, invite some pushback so it can help us reflect and maybe expand on some points. And I think that's,
Mhm.
you know, genuinely really welcome. You know, I'd love to hear what people would genuinely think, you know.
That's right. Good. Well, Oliver, it's been a pleasure talking with you, and we'll talk with you next time.
Good stuff, Chris. Same here.
All right.
Cheers.